Every generation wonders if the next one is going to drift, but sometimes they surprise you.
Well, something incredible is happening at Southeastern University, and you're there on the front lines. You're watching this happen. It has been amazing to see students worshiping nonstop. How long has this been going on now?
So we have a 3-day conference that we do every year. It started on Monday. And so we had conference Monday, conference Tuesday. And then Wednesday morning, something shifted in one of the sessions. One of our speakers, her name is Jenny Allen, preached an incredible message, but the response time was interesting because what she did was she asked students to confess sin publicly and as loud as possible. At first, we were kind of like, we don't know how this is going to look or where it's going to go. And students literally leaned in completely and started shouting as loud as they could, confessing sin, burdens, issues, all kinds of stuff. And after that happened, something shifted in the room. Something undeniable happened that we all felt. And from there, we had breakout sessions and lunches. And after 30 minutes of students at the altar praying, we're like, oh, maybe we need to push back one of our lunches. And then we canceled the lunch. And then we thought maybe we need to push back our breakout sessions. And then we canceled our breakouts. Then we thought maybe we need to push back our classes. And then we canceled classes because the worship wasn't ending and something undeniable was happening. And so we just leaned into it. We had no break, no pause. It went all through the night to the last session. 10:30 hits and we're like, hey, we need to give up the building. We were at a church down the street. We're not a church, we're a university, and we were renting a church. And we said, hey, we need to leave the church, but it feels like this can't stop. It would feel disobedient to try to pause it. And so what we did was, hey, actually, we're going to leave this building and we're going to come right back on campus. And since Tuesday night at close to midnight, this has not stopped.
I've been in a room where young people refuse to stop worshiping. And when I saw what's happening in Florida, it took me back.
And we're talking on Friday now. So this has been going on.
Wednesday night.
Midnight.
This has not stopped.
And it's 24 hours a day.
Hasn't been 24 hours a day, but pretty close. We've had a few really short breaks to just turn rooms around, let people go get something to eat, take a nap, and come right back and lean into
Which is healthy and amazing that people are coming. I mean, when you look at this, you're a campus pastor there. Have you seen anything like this ever in your ministry before firsthand?
Jenny Allen, we're in the session and things are happening. And we know that something undeniable is happening. And she says, Jonathan, is this normal? I mean, we're a Pentecostal university. We're charismatic. We're used to lingering, long altar calls, great moments in the presence of God. But the only thing that I could think to tell her was this feels normal somewhat, but it feels like we just entered into a new normal.
Wow. Okay. A new normal. Now, let's get a little bit more into what is happening because the videos are incredible. The live feed is amazing. I was just watching some of it. We saw back in 2023 with the Asbury revival, and I know some called it an outpouring. There were all different terms based on what people thought was happening. Something incredible was happening. It feels very reminiscent of that. So when you look at that and you look at what's happening now, let's just talk a little bit about, there were young people yelling out their sins, confessing their sins. What else are you seeing when it comes to worship? Are you seeing any healings? I mean, I'm very, very interested and intrigued by what's actively happening. We're watching it, but what is happening on the ground?
So the people at Asbury, specifically Pastor Zach Mearcreeps, have been a huge encouragement to us. We feel like we're on the phone with them every hour, just asking, hey, what did this look like for you guys? What did you learn? What mistakes can we learn from? And so I would say very similar to Asbury, but here's, I think, the difference. When Asbury happened, nobody knew what it was. We didn't know how to title it. We didn't know what to name it. We didn't even fully know what was happening. But now there's a pattern. Because we saw what happened in Asbury, when stuff started happening in London, we said, oh, this looks similar. When stuff starts happening at Southeastern, it's like, wait a minute, there's a pattern here. We've seen this before. And so it was less questions of like, what's happening? And now we're like, oh, what are we supposed to do? How do we even steward this? And so calling our friends at Asbury, we asked them like, what was the stuff that you guys saw? And it was very reminiscent of what we were seeing. And so the two kind of metrics, the the guiding principles that we've been kind of leaning into was they said there was an undeniable, just roaring hunger that was abnormal, that was different. And number two, there was a kind of tangible, undeniable sense of the presence of God. And when those two simultaneous things are happening, something unique and special is happening that you need to lean into. And so the services, there is no program, there's no schedule. We're trying our very best to make sure that we have people safe. There's rotations for worship leaders and security guards and production people. But really, all that's happening is tons of worship, confession of sin, testimonies, prayer for healing, and people giving kind of prophetic words that they feel for the community. But that's it. We don't really have a plan. What is happening is we feel like we're flying a kite. We're trying to get ourselves in position. We're doing everything on our side. And then we're saying, Lord, the room belongs to you. Bring the wind.
When you think about the term revival, if somebody says to you right now, are you experiencing at Southeastern University revival? What would you say? How would you respond to them?
Yeah, I would personally say no. And here's why. Revival is something that can only be evaluated in hindsight. Only looking back can you say, oh, that was truly a revival. We saw what happened. We saw the impact of it. And then we were able to designate what it was. And so I would say you can only determine revival in hindsight. That's one. Two, in scripture and in church history, there's kind of definitive patterns and characteristics of revival. This has only been happening for 2 or 3 days. And so we personally aren't using the language of revival. Here's what we're telling people. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what's happening. We just know that something is happening, and we're trying to do our very best to lean into it. And so we've said, hey, there's a move of God happening at Southeastern University. It feels like there is a spiritual outpouring happening at university. We know that there is a spiritual awakening happening on our campus. That's some of the language that we're using. One, because we're trying to have a posture of humility. We don't know what's going on, how long it's going to last, what it's going to turn into. And then two, we feel more comfortable with saying, hey, there's an outpouring of God's Spirit, and we're just trying to be great stewards of it.
Are you starting to see people come in from other schools? I know people are watching at other schools. You could talk about that at other universities that the feed is being watched. Are you getting people? Because at Asbury, you had people start to descend on the town from all over the world. Is that starting there?
Yeah, a little bit. We've actually been kind of hesitant to invite people for a couple of reasons. One, just capacity. Our chapel isn't actually super huge. We only have capacity for about 800 people in our chapel, and it's packed to capacity with students. That's actually the second thing. Our priority is the students. There is a spiritual awakening happening in these students, and they are leading this. We are not. If anything, we're actually trying to get out of the way. The students are the ones who are bringing the hunger, who are bringing the passion. And so we're actually following their lead. And so when students are coming up to me in the corner and they're saying, Pastor Jonathan, we just prayed for this person and they got healed. I'm like, all right, then let's share that testimony. The students coming up with Bibles and saying, I felt this word from the Lord that I'd like to speak over everybody. And we try to discern if it's the right thing. And we say, you know what? Come on stage with me. Let's go ahead and share that word. When we're in worship and the students start singing a song that the worship team isn't singing, we go to that song because we recognize that the students are leading the room, and that's what's happening. And so we try to minimize the amount of guests, number one, because of capacity, number two, because students are leading, and number three, we don't want anyone to take away from the purity of what's happening in that room. And so what we've done practically is, in the sanctuary, or our Bush Chapel, is for students. We've set up large screens outside of Bush Chapel in Kelly Gardens where hundreds of people were there last night praying, worshiping, experiencing healing, prophetic words, confession of sin, all the things. And it's just been fun. We're still trying to steward it. We don't know what's going to happen. A lot of people want to come, and we're trying to think through what that looks like.
And that's amazing too, being really smart about it. One of the things that happened, and I found it discouraging, to be honest, with Asbury, was a lot of postulation and theories, and well, maybe it's just over emotionalism. And I think that's a healthy conversation to have sometimes, but when you're in the middle of something amazing that's happening, you want to lean in. Like what you're talking about is being very, very definitive and discerning about how you handle this, that you guys are really thinking through this. What do you say to those people who might say, well, is it over emotionalism? I mean, you're there, you're seeing it, you're experiencing it. What is your experience and what are you seeing?
100%. The first thing that I would say, anytime that I talk to skeptic. I'm like, oh, just get in the room. Just get in the room. And in my opinion, there is, again, two things: undeniable hunger from students, genuine, authentic, real. Students are bringing blankets and sleeping bags because they don't want to go back to their dorm 300 yards away from them because they don't want to get out of the presence of God. And then two, like, would you rather them be at the club? They could be emotional at the club. They could be emotional at the concert. They could be emotional doing all kinds of things. Like if the thing is, oh, this just feels like passion and zeal, I'd rather them have passion for Jesus than anything else.
Now, not every emotional moment is revival, but when thousands of students won't stop singing, you pay attention.
And so, like, first of all, like, I think that's a good thing. And then the second thing, the thing of like, well, is this just emotionalism? And is it, hey, maybe we're just trying to create space and we're seeing where it takes us. We're trying to be very discerning. We don't want to manipulate. We don't want to push. If anything, we don't have even expectations or timelines around how long this is going to last. When we feel like it's done and the Lord's done doing what he's doing, we'll say, hey, we're going to close up shop. In the same way that it feels irresponsible to stop it, it would feel irresponsible to push it beyond where we feel God wants to take it.
I love that. Well, and I would also say too, even if something, and I'm not saying this is, and I don't think it is, even if something was over emotional for some people, you don't know what that's going to mean 10 years from now, 5 years from now, when maybe somebody else comes in with the gospel in a way that it connects to that experience that they had, right? You know, so I think there's, people really don't, I think that critique all the way through. It's, again, it's a healthy conversation to have, but what you're experiencing right now is incredible. And I'll just ask before I let you go, and I know you have a lot of other people to talk to and you got a chapel to get back into. When you look at what has happened in America since 2023, really, which is when this all kicked off, January of that year, even before Asbury, there were some other things happening. Damar Hamlin collapsing on the field, people praying for him. And we sort of watched all this happen. What goes through your heart and your mind as a pastor? There's a lot of negative happening, but there's also a lot of this spiritual outpouring happening, it feels, in our culture.
100%. I thank God for Asbury because I think Asbury just opened up and expanded our hope for what's possible. And so when all this stuff happened, when all of this started, I literally said, is it happening again? Because I had seen it. And so I had faith and hope for it. And so I would say, I look at what's happening and I think it's giving people hope for the future. That, hey, this is possible. Asbury, all the movements that are happening, the things that are happening in London, the things that are happening on college campuses across the country. I think Gen Z is just, I think my generation was a little skeptical, a little cynical, because we had seen some stuff and been through some stuff, and we had some heroes that fell and like all those things. And I think Gen Z is more hopeful than we give them credit for. And I think all these things that are happening, they're the ones that are leading it. And it's giving me hope as a pastor for the future. Actually, can you ask me that question one more time? I want to make sure I answered it the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The question was really, when you look at what is happening in the culture right now, since 2023, we have seen outpouring after outpouring. It started even before Asbury. When you look at that, and you look at there's a lot of negative happening in culture. Just as a pastor, what goes through your heart and your mind?
Oh, yeah, I've just got hope for the future. Whenever you look at the church in history and whenever you look at scripture, oftentimes the darkest moments are when God does his greatest work. I mean, we see that over and over and over again. And so over the past couple of years, COVID, political polarization, racial tension, I mean, fill in the blank, right? What a great recipe for a move of God.
I remember years ago, I was a college pastor for River of Life Church out of Abilene, Texas. And me and my group, we decided, my kids they kept on telling me, we got to go to Passion. We got to go to Passion. And I didn't know if I was really up for another conference, but I gave in. I said, all right, we'll get together and we'll figure out a way to get there. And we all piled into one of those white vans that's standard church issue. You know what I mean? So we got there and it was a good conference. It was a solid conference. I was actually glad to be there. There were some things that were happening in some of the students' lives that I work with, and I saw some things definitely pretty strong around me. But through all the the conference, through all of the different special speakers, the special worship music, through all of the teachings, there was one thing that stood out above all else, and that was the very end. At the very end of this conference, we were having a very strong worship at the time. I mean, you could tell, this was like the crescendo of the whole weekend conference. And at the end, they start, saying things like, thank you for being here, and God bless you all, and all this kind of stuff. Well, the students kept singing. It was a fairly large coliseum, and this place was packed, and these students would not stop singing. And I was kind of looking around like, what's going on? Because in my mind as a college pastor, I'm thinking, okay, I got to make sure I got all my kids. Okay, where did we park the van? Make sure we don't leave anything because I don't want to come back, all that kind of stuff. But no, they had one thing on their mind. And I mean collectively, through this entire Coliseum, I don't know, it could have been 5,000, could have been 8,000, could have been 10,000, could have been 12,000. I don't remember. But I do remember this. They just kept singing. And I found myself doing the same thing. And now it wasn't days and days and days, but it was hours and hours and hours. It was an amazing moment that I have never forgotten. It seemed like some of the most genuine worship to me that I had ever been in, that I had ever seen, experienced, or been a part of. So whenever I see something like that happening again, I take notice.